Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot onto the damp sands of a Polynesian beach, the kind where the stars still shimmer above you and the waves whisper secrets just beyond reach. There's a faint orange glow building near the tree-line embers, crackling under a canopy of palm fronds. The scent of wet earth banana leaves and something faintly smoky lingers in the salty air. You shuffle toward a small group already at work before the first rooster dares to test his lungs. One of them gestures for you to help haul a smooth river stone, still cool for now, over to a growing pit ringed in blackened coral. And that's when it hits you. You've been volunteered for breakfast duty 1,000 years before microwaves. This isn't a spa retreat. It's not even brunch. It's a full-body dirt under your nails, sweat in your eyes culinary ceremony, and you probably won't survive this without at least one minor toe injury. But don't worry, we're here more to watch than to sweat. Mostly. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to comment, let me know your location and local time. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're kneeling beside a shallow earthen pit lined with stones the size of coconuts. This is the emu, the earth oven, that will soon turn a pile of raw roots leaves and hopefully pork into a celebratory feast. You can hear the fire crackle beneath the stones, heating them to a shade of angry orange-red. And your job apparently is to not get singed as the fire master rearranges the stones with two long sticks like a maestro tuning a volcanic orchestra. The pit is more than just practical, it's sacred. In many Polynesian cultures, including those of Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, and the Marquesas, the preparation of an emu is as ceremonial as it is culinary. Certain people light the fire, others stack the stones, and still others bring the ingredients, each roll steeped in custom and family line. Historians still argue whether the specific stone-laying patterns were purely spiritual or if they served some hidden thermodynamic genius we're only beginning to understand. The scent thickens as someone tosses a handful of sugarcane fronds on top, just to test the heat, they say. The fronds curl blacken, then combust with a soft whoosh. Good. That means it's almost time to load the pit. Your hands brush the woven mats beside you. These will soon smother the food, trapping the heat, the smoke, and all those glorious flavors inside for hours. Imagine a slow cooker the size of a small boat powered by lava rocks and patience. It's not just the food that matters here, it's the gathering. Even the smallest village feast demands a team. Aunties chatter as they prepare taro. Cousins chase each other with coconut shells. And some poor uncle is carving notches into a banana trunk, probably for some sauce made entirely of fish parts and low expectations. And then comes a moment of silence. The pit is ready. Hot stones are nudged into place. A bed of green banana leaves is laid down, hissing gently as they touch the rock. The air fills with the scent of chlorophyll meeting heat, a smell so ancient you can almost taste the Neolithic in it. You're handed a bundle. It's soft, warm, and slightly dripping. You peek inside. Pork, or possibly something less identifiable, wrapped in taro leaves and twine made from coconut fiber. You place it gently in the pit, guided by a nod from someone who clearly knows what they're doing. This is no random dump and go. There's an order to the ingredients: dense roots first, then meat, then delicate leaves and fish on top. It's a layering act, part flavor, science part edible Jenga tower. And yes, someone's probably humming. A fringe theory among some anthropologists, bless their spreadsheets, suggests that imu ovens may have also played acoustic roles in community rituals, subtly changing the resonance of chants when buried underground. Wild maybe, but you're standing here now barefoot in the sand, hearing voice. The earth still exhales wisps of steam, where the imu oven slumbers like a sleeping dragon with a belly full of vegetables and dreams of smoky pork. But you don't get to nap just yet. The feast is far from ready, and now it's time to dive into what might be Polynesia's original cookbook, only this one's written in banana leaves and memory, not ink. You move toward a shaded area beneath a tangle of palms where the aunties have already set up shop. There's a rhythmic rustle of leaves being stripped, folded, torn, and repurposed in ways that would put any modern zero-waste Pinterest board to shame. This is the banana leaf blueprint, equal parts food wrapping steam trap and serving dish. Some are weaving tight parcels for bundles of taro. Others are crafting open boats for sweet breadfruit or fish paste, all while gossiping in a dialect that sounds like it could slice papaya with tone alone. You take a seat. A bundle is handed to you. It's slippery, warm, and leaking. You've been entrusted with the ceremonial wrapping of something important, and no one is going to tell you what it is. Judging by the aroma, it's either cooked fish or yesterday's fish waiting to be redeemed by hot rocks and positive thinking. The folding technique is deceptively complex. One corner tucked here, a leaf vein creased just so. It's part origami, part food preservation, part social bonding. And if you mess up, the contents will escape mid-bake and make you the quiet punchline of the meal. Mainstream historians agree that this type of wrapping was key to food preservation and flavor control. It also kept everything moist in the pit, created a layer of insulation, and helped people portion meals before the concept of Tupperware or Ziploc bags even existed. You, however, are just trying not to rip the leaf. Here's a fun fact: no one asked for banana leaves are waterproof thanks to a natural waxy coating. So not only do they steam things to perfection, they also prevent anything from drying out. This is particularly important when you're cooking something like octopus, which, if you've ever tried to chew without proper hydration, has the texture of a car tire in a wool sock. There's a soft tap on your arm. One of the older women hands you a woven tray filled with pale pudding-like stuff. "Ulu," she says, "breadfruit. It looks like mashed potatoes with an identity crisis. Your job: portion it into bite-sized blobs and wrap each in a tiny banana leaf cone, which you now realize are meant to be individual servings. You do your best." The laughter you hear might not be entirely supportive. Meanwhile, the layering of dishes continues back at the imu pit. Some of your carefully wrapped bundles are carried off and lowered into place, sandwiched between larger parcels like steamy puzzle pieces. The pit, once just a hole in the ground, is beginning to resemble a subterranean food vault. Here's the thing: this whole layering system isn't just culinary theater, it's architecture. Items that take longer to cook go closer to the hot stones. Delicate items rest near the top. And everything is arranged to minimize air pockets because Trapped air equals uneven cooking, and no one wants raw yam next to perfectly roasted pig. Historians still argue whether the precise order of ingredients in a traditional emu was the result of centuries of experimentation or was simply based on what Uncle Mako always said worked best and everyone nodded along with. Either way, the results speak for themselves. Speaking of results, some fringe scholars have tried to measure the temperature gradient inside an emu oven with modern equipment. The problem: once you bury sensitive probes in hot volcanic stones, well, they stop being sensitive probes and start being grilled probes. So we're left with educated guesswork and the culinary instincts of people who've been doing this since the stars were last in a different alignment. Someone hands you a thin stick with a small curl of breadfruit on the end. Taste test time. It's soft, nutty, slightly smoky. Definitely better than it looked 10 minutes ago. And wrapped in the banana leaf, it's taken on a faint, grassy aroma like toasted lawn clippings, if those clippings had been bathed in coconut milk and love. By now the air is thick with the smell of cooking, starches, scorched leaves, and anticipation. People are beginning to gather under the central canopy, a patchwork of woven mats, palm fronds, and a sail that probably used to belong to someone's fishing canoe. The fire crackles, birds call out lazily, and the sea beyond the tree line glitters like someone spilled crushed glass across the waves. And just as you think it's time to relax, with the Imu oven sealed and the scent of slowly roasting food drifting through the air like a lullaby made of smoke and nostalgia, you find yourself temporarily off the hook. But this isn't time for a nap. No, now it's time for another kind of preparation, one that involves firewood, smooth stones, and a slightly alarming number of bowls. You're ushered toward a side clearing where an older man is already stacking rocks into a neat circle. Not volcanic ones this time, these are river stones, smooth and heat retentive, chosen not for burial, but for boiling. That's right, we're going to cook with rocks, literally. And not just because someone left the gas stove at home. You settle on a log as the man, let's call him Tua, begins heating the stones directly in the fire. It's hypnotic, a slow, deliberate ritual that turns each gray pebble into a glowing ember in disguise. And this is where it gets interesting. You don't toss those hot rocks into water in a pot, oh no. You pour the water over them, or sometimes you place the stones into food directly. It sounds dangerous, that's because it is. You learn this firsthand when Tua hands you a pair of wooden tongs and gestures toward a bubbling trough. Drop it in gently, he says. You do. The stone sizzles, the liquid hisses, and your eyebrows involuntarily rise 3 inches. Welcome to the Polynesian version of sous vide, ancient, elegant, and slightly terrifying. Mainstream historians agree that stone boiling was a cornerstone, a hem, of traditional Polynesian cooking, especially on islands without much metal for pots. It's not just for heat, it also mineralizes the food, infusing it with the essence of the rock. It's like seasoning your soup with geology. You watch as a woven basket filled with taro paste and coconut cream is slowly lowered over a cluster of red-hot stones in a deep wooden bowl. It looks like a spa day for carbohydrates. A wooden cover is placed over the top, steam curling out in little lazy fingers. This is your lunch, or possibly your second breakfast. Who's keeping track? Somewhere behind you, a group of children are arguing over who gets the first bite of something called poi. You're warned, don't be fooled by its grayish-purple color. Poi is a fermented taro paste, and while it looks like paint primer and smells like rainy clay, it is sacred and delicious, or so the local opinion goes. Texture-wise, it's somewhere between yogurt and regret. You're offered a scoop. You try it. The taste surprisingly mild, a little nutty, faintly sour, and it sticks to your teeth like it has dreams of becoming dental putty. Still, it grows on you. Meanwhile, back in the stone boiling area, another group is prepping palusami taro leaves layered with coconut cream onions, and sometimes fish wrapped into bundles and placed right on hot stones to steam. It's like lasagna, but greener and slightly more committed to burning your fingers. Here's your quirky tidbit of the day. In some older traditions, cooks would spit into the food literally to test heat. If it hissed, it was ready. If it just sat there and looked disappointed, the fire needed more coaxing. This is why you always let the elders cook first. Tua tells you about the ancestral ovens, about how different stones gave different flavors, about how basalt was better for long roasts, but river rock gave sweetness to soups. You nod like you know what he means. But part of you is still marveling at how people invented steam cuisine with zero gadgets and a strict no-metal policy. Historians still argue whether this rock-boiling technique originated in Polynesia independently or was carried across from Southeast Asia with the original settlers. Some believe it evolved separately on different islands depending on volcanic activity. Others claim it came down to whichever grandparent burned their fingers the least and passed on the safest version. There's a break in the clouds and sunlight spills over the clearing like warm broth. A breeze stirs the pandanus leaves. You lean back and let the moment stretch. From the edge of the forest, someone begins to sing not a full song, more like a melodic list of ingredients or perhaps instructions. It's hard to tell. The words float, dip, and rise like smoke. You recognize some of them. Coconut, yam, fire. Wait, did someone just rhyme eel with feel probably? It turns out recipes were often passed down through chance. That way, even if you couldn't read or write, you could still recite Grandma's pork marinade while paddling a canoe in high surf. Rhythm helped retain the information. Plus, let's face it, it's harder to forget the steps when they're part of a catchy chorus. The stones hiss again. A new pot is placed over them this time, filled with plantains sliced lengthwise, swimming in palm sugar and water. It's basically prehistoric banana pudding. Your stomach rumbles in anticipation. A child nearby laughs and says it. The evening deepens like a perfectly simmered broth, rich, slow, and quietly fragrant. As the sunlight dims and the sky begins its transformation from powder blue to mauve, and finally into inky navy, your focus drifts from the fire pit to something far more elemental: bananas. Or more precisely, the myriad forms bananas can take when left in the hands of Polynesian culinary sorcery. You wander toward a mat laid with glistening golden slices of banana, some charred and crisp from open flame, others nestled in warm leaf bundles like gifts from the dessert gods. A woman barefoot, firm-handed, and wielding a wooden spatula, with the confidence of someone who has tamed lava, is flipping slices over a flat basalt slab set over fire. She greets you with a grin and a plate. "Fai kakai," she says, "banana dumplings drenched in coconut caramel." You don't hesitate. As you chew, the outer air crisp, the inside sticky and sweet, she begins telling you about the types of bananas. Not all are created equal. There's the cooking kind, larger, starchier, more serious. Then there's the eating kind, smaller, sweeter, the flirts of the banana world. And as she tells it, each type has its own myth, its own dish, and occasionally its own ceremony. Historians agree that bananas were among the first domesticated plants brought during Polynesian expansion. These plants weren't just stowaways. They were VIPs on double-hulled canoes, carefully wrapped in bark and nurtured like royalty on open sea voyages. You try to imagine crossing the Pacific with nothing but stars above and a banana tree as your travel companion. Sounds cute. Sounds alarming. You watch as more bananas are mashed into a paste and combined with shredded coconut, then wrapped in tia leaves and tucked into a steamer basket made of interwoven palm fronds. This isn't just food prep, it's craftsmanship. And leaf wrapping, you're told, is practically an art degree here. Fold wrong and the bundle leaks. Fold right and the steam stays in like it's sealed by ancient edible magic. A small boy named Laki pulls at your sleeve and beckons you toward a different corner of the clearing. Here his grandmother is preparing something you've never seen before, banana stem soup. That's right, the stem. Not the fruit, not the flower, but the fibrous, pale heart of the whole banana plant. It's shredded, soaked, and slow cooked with taro and fish broth until it resembles something between shredded cabbage and damp optimism. And you try it. Of course you do. It's earthy. It's subtle. It tastes like if you could make soup from rain clouds and mulch. Not bad, just contemplative. There's another dish you're offered, this one simply called kumara with banana. The bananas are baked until blackened and syrupy, the kumara mashed with coconut milk. It's a side dish that feels like dessert, or a dessert that tastes suspiciously like it wants to be a side dish. You love the confusion. By now the cook fire is pulsing like a heartbeat, and the banana fragrance, sweet, smoky, sharp, is practically clinging to your skin. Someone starts peeling a bunch of red bananas. These, you learn, are more rare with thicker peels and dense creamy interiors. These are for the chief, says a nearby elder with a wink. He hands you one anyway. And just as you start to think you've tasted every banana-based dish imaginable, someone hands you a mug. It's warm, it's brown. It smells like molasses in memory. Banana beer, they whisper. You raise an eyebrow. They nod solemnly. This is your quirky tidbit of the day. Fermented banana beverages were a thing, mild, lightly effervescent, and sometimes accidentally strong enough to make your grandmother dance barefoot on the roof. It's cloudy, slightly tangy, and oddly refreshing. The beer, not your grandmother. As you sip, the discussion turns from cooking methods to food philosophy. Banana, they tell you, is more than just sustenance. It's offering, it's story. It's wrapped in birth rituals, harvest festivals, even lullabies. A baby's first solid food is often banana mush. An elder's final meal, probably banana porridge. From cradle to grave, bananas got your back. Historians still argue whether the banana was first cultivated in Papua New Guinea and spread to Polynesia, or whether it made its way independently from Southeast Asia. The debate is tangled like banana fibers, but most agree the plant held high status, so much so that banana groves were often planted near temples or alongside sacred breadfruit trees as symbolic companions. A torch flickers to life. The fire dies down to coals glowing like sleepy embers in a cradle of sand. The evening air hangs heavy with the mingled perfume of charred banana leaves, sea salt, and distant breadfruit blossoms. Someone fans the coals with a woven mat, and you shift your weight on the woven mat beneath you, belly full of banana brain, soft as poi. Now it's time to talk about breadfruit. Oh, breadfruit, the overachieving starch balloon of the Pacific. It looks like something between a dinosaur egg and a spiky stress ball, and when roasted it turns into a texture that sits somewhere between fresh baked bread and mashed potato that just got its act together. You're led toward another cooking pit, this one ringed with warm stones and wrapped in a cocoon of banana leaves. A young woman named Afa shows you a whole breadfruit roasting over the embers. No oil, no glaze, no seasoning, just fruit and fire. She slaps the outer skin and it thuds like a ripe melon that's overdue for a midlife crisis. Almost ready, she says, eyes gleaming. Breadfruit is kind of the Swiss Army knife of island crops. Boil it, roast it, mash it, ferment it, fry it, or dry it into chips, it adapts. It feeds armies, babies, and picky uncles. It was so valuable that entire voyaging expeditions were built around its cultivation and transport. And if you're picturing a bunch of ancient Polynesian sailors dragging breadfruit trees across the Pacific in dugout canoes, you're spot on. They even named their boats after it sometimes. Historians still argue whether the spread of breadfruit was more intentional agriculture or just really persistent driftwood that grew where it landed. Either way, it became the centerpiece of countless island meals. You try your first bite of roasted breadfruit, it's surprisingly comforting, mild starchy, with a hint of nutty sweetness. It's like a potato and a marshmallow had a very quiet child. Afa spreads it with mashed taro and a drizzle of coconut cream. It's heavenly. Or maybe it's the coconut cream talking. Someone nearby is grating coconut on what looks like a prehistoric cheese grater, a hand-carved bench with shark teeth embedded in it. You sidle closer, pretending not to stare, but also deeply interested in how no one here ever seems to cut their fingers. They're preparing a dish known as ulu vai, a kind of savory breadfruit pudding. The breadfruit is mashed with grated coconut seawater for saltiness and sometimes chopped fish or fermented taro. Then it's packed into small bowls wrapped with more banana leaf because banana leaves are apparently the duct tape of Polynesian cooking and steamed over hot stones. This brings us to the magic trick of the evening boiling stones. No, not a heavy metal tribute band, literal boiling rocks. Without metal pots or kettles, islanders had to heat water in clever ways. And so they heated stones in the fire until they were blistering hot, then dropped them carefully into bowls or carved wooden troughs filled with water and ingredients. Steam bubble boil. It works, like really well. Watching it is mesmerizing. You stare as glowing stones are lifted with wooden tongs and gently lowered into coconut milk. It hisses, boils, and churns like a witch's brew, if witches liked mildly sweet soup. Someone adds chunks of breadfruit and strips of octopus. The result is part stew, part mystery. That's your quirky tidbit for this round. These boiling stone techniques weren't just for meals, they were also used for herbal medicine, fabric dyeing, and the occasional heated argument about whose rock was hotter. You're handed a carved bowl still steaming. The soup inside smells like the ocean on vacation. The breadfruit soaks up everything, the salt, the spice, the fire. You take a cautious sip expecting blandness, but are met instead with depth. It's savory, umami-rich complex in a way only a rock-boiled soup could be. You nod politely. Then you keep sipping. Then you finish the whole bowl and stare at it like it owes you another. Overhead, the stars begin to gather, not just twinkling, but crowding together in clumps as though even the sky can't resist the aroma of roasted starch. You lean back and listen as an elder begins telling a tale. Long ago, she says, breadfruit was a gift from the gods. One version of the story says a man gave his life to save his starving family. Where he was buried, a breadfruit tree grew. Another version claims the gods hurled the fruit from the heavens, and it stuck in the ground like a giant's dart. Historians still argue whether morning sunlight spills across the sand in slow syrupy beams, nudging you gently awake. The scent of something earthy and sweet floats past ripe bananas, bruised slightly peeled, and left in the sun just long enough to warm up but not cook. You stretch the mat beneath you, creaking faintly, and the quiet shuffle of early footsteps tells you someone's already up and preparing the next meal. Today you're learning about something that sounds almost made up, the stone oven method, known as emu or umu, depending on the island. Same idea, big hole, lots of hot rocks, delicious slow-cooked food. And you're going to see just how deep the art of baking food underground can go. Spoiler alert, it goes deeper than your average potato chip bag metaphor. The pit is already dug. It's shaped like a shallow grave, which, yes, is mildly concerning, but instead of ominous music, there's laughter and the smell of ginger root and tea leaves. You wander closer and see men placing smooth river stones in the fire, heating them until they glisten like dragon eggs. This is the prep work, and it's serious business. Each stone is selected for its ability to hold heat without exploding, because nothing says ruined lunch like a shrapnel coconut stew. Your teacher for the day is Koa, a broad-shouldered man with a calm voice and a machete he uses more like a wand. He shows you how to layer the pit, first the hot stones, then wet banana trunks to create steam, followed by wrapped bundles of fish, taro yams, bananas, and occasionally a wild pig if one was particularly unlucky that week. It's a process passed down over hundreds of generations, taught by repetition, not recipe cards. He hands you a parcel wrapped in ti leaves. Inside, a hunk of fish marinated in seaweed and lime, studded with garlic and crushed candle nuts. You place it gently atop the leaves, careful not to burn yourself on the rocks, radiating pure sun-level heat. The entire pit is soon layered like a sleepy lasagna steam leaf, meat root repeat. Then it's all buried, yes, literally. More banana leaves, then dirt, then finally a woven mat or a thick tarp to seal in the heat. It's cooking time. 2 hours if you're impatient. 4 if you're doing it right. 6 if you're someone's aunt who refuses to serve anything underdone. Historians still argue whether the Imu technique originated independently on multiple islands or spread from a single migration source, sort of the Polynesian version of the old who really invented the sandwich debate. But what's certain is this: it works brilliantly. The heat is gentle but thorough. The steam infuses every morsel, and the result, fall-apart tenderness you'd normally need to bribe a French chef for. While the oven simmers underground, you're invited to help with the side dishes. This is where things get interesting. Ever seen someone turn a pile of bananas into a sauce that can melt your existential dread? Because that's happening. A woman named Lonnie mashes overripe bananas with coconut cream, adds fermented sugar cane juice, and sets the mixture in a bowl lined with warm taro leaves. The result smells like breakfast and dessert went to therapy together and found harmony. Beside her, another cook is preparing a dish of poi, not Hawaiian poi, mind you, but a thicker version made with mashed breadfruit and sea salt. It has the consistency of memory foam and about the same bounce. You give it a poke, it jiggles. It's polite enough not to jiggle back. Time ticks slowly here, not because there's no urgency, but because urgency is simply not invited. Koa passes around bowls of cooled coconut water mixed with lime and salt like a sleepy cousin of Gatorade. You sip and watch birds circle overhead, curious if they'll be invited to the feast. Spoiler, they will not. As you wait, you hear stories. One elder explains how underground ovens weren't just for everyday cooking, they were used in ceremonies, weddings, even funerals. The same method that cooks your lunch might also be used to honor your ancestors. It's humbling, and also makes you wonder how many historical ghosts are hanging around judging the seasoning choices. A young boy sneaks a peek under the tarp and is quickly shooed away with a laugh. Patience is part of the recipe. So you wait, and while you do, someone teaches you a lullaby, soft, rhythmic, and almost hypnotic. It's a cooking song sung to soothe the oven spirits. Whether it works or not, it definitely helps you forget about time, or deadlines, or that one email you still haven't answered since 2021. Eventually, the moment arrives. Koa uncovers the pit like he's revealing a buried treasure. Steam rises in thick curls carrying the scent of earth and spice. One by one, the bundles are lifted out, each one slightly scorched on the edges, slightly magical in scent. They're unwrapped with care, revealing fish that flakes like confetti taro, so soft it could be mistaken for cake and banana. It's your third morning on the island, and the sun is already nudging you with golden elbows. You wake to the sound of wood being split, soft, rhythmic thunk, 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 like a heartbeat made of bamboo. There's a new scent in the air today, sweet smoky, and just a little strange, like toasted sugar met a jungle and didn't bother to bring a map. Today you're learning about the tandoor of Polynesia, though they don't call it that, and no one here knows what na-en is. Still, the comparison sticks. You're about to get acquainted with stone griddle cooking, the art of turning lava rock into a sizzling stovetop right out in the open air. You're led to a wide, flat basalt slab, blackened from years, maybe centuries of use. It's been placed over a sunken hearth where firewood crackles, heating the stone until it can sear a slice of fish faster than your modern stovetop. The rock is slicked with coconut oil, and soon it's shimmering like obsidian on vacation. First up, banana pancakes. Yes, really. You watch as a mixture of mashed bananas, shredded taro coconut milk, and a touch of fermented sugar cane is ladled onto the hot rock. It sizzles, instantly puffing slightly at the edges. A flat shell, yes, a literal clam shell, is used to flip them. The shell hisses when it touches the stone, and the pancake flips with satisfying drama. You are unreasonably impressed. As the pancakes cook, a woman named Mealy tells you that this breakfast dish is known as kaka and it's usually reserved for children or lazy uncles. So naturally, it's perfect for you. She hands you one hot off the stone, folded and drizzled with warmed banana syrup. You bite in and nearly cry. It's crispy on the edges, soft in the center, and tastes like someone found a way to make sunshine edible. This is the mainstream history bit of the morning throughout Polynesia. Stone griddle cooking was a clever response to a metal-poor environment. Without access to iron pans or copper pots, islanders adapted by using nature's original hot plate lava. Basalt rocks were chosen specifically for their ability to hold and distribute heat evenly. Some islanders still argue whether certain stones make the food taste better. Others just say it's tradition. That brings us to your quirky tidbit. On some islands, the best cooking rocks were believed to be alive. Not like little rock pets, don't worry, but spiritually animated. Certain stones had names. Some even had rules like only being used for pork, or never touched by women, or always facing east during the solstice. You know, normal dinner prep stuff. Today, the griddle becomes a breakfast buffet. After pancakes, there are slices of taro battered in coconut and laid carefully on the hot stone. The batter crackles, forming a thin golden crust. Then come skewers of banana wrapped in pandan leaves, caramelizing into something between candy and jelly. The air smells like a candy shop wandered into a rainforest and decided never to leave. You help out, of course, carefully placing strips of salted breadfruit onto the stone, turning them with sticks, pretending you know what you're doing. A kid nearby gives you a thumbs up. That's good enough. While the adults cook, the kids play a game with small pebbles, tossing and catching in patterns so fast it makes your brain blink. One elder tells you this was once part of culinary training, testing hand-eye coordination for flipping, stirring again, and not burning your fingers on ancient kitchenware. You eat until you're full, then somehow eat more. The food is simple, but every bite feels like it came with a blessing. Nothing here is fast, but nothing here is wasted either. After the meal, the cooking slab is scrubbed down with palm husks and seawater, then left to cool. Millie wraps the leftover pancakes in banana leaves and tucks them into a woven basket with a smooth stone on top. To keep the spirits fed, she says with a wink. You smile, not totally sure if she's joking. Later, you're invited to see another variation of the hot stone technique, this one portable. A pair of men lift a flat rock onto a canoe and paddle it to a neighboring islet for a wedding feast. That's your historical debate for the day. Some scholars believe these traditions were static, rooted to place. Others argue they were fluid, mobile, part of a toolkit carried. By mid-morning, the air grows warm and thick, like the island itself is baking slowly in a clay oven. You stretch your legs, brush away a sleepy gecko from your arm, and follow the sound of gentle splashing. Today you're going to the lagoon, but not to swim. This is where the boiling stones come into play. Yes, actual boiling stones, just when you thought cooking couldn't get more dramatic. You follow a narrow path of crushed shells where shadows flicker through pandanus trees, like someone's playing with a giant strobe light. And there, in a shaded clearing beside a spring-fed pool, you see it, a large polished wooden bowl, maybe 3 feet across. Beside it is a fire pit glowing with orange embers, and inside the pit stones are turning from black to white hot like miniature suns. This isn't a demo, it's lunch prep. Your hosts call it Imu vai the water oven. They explain with practiced ease how stones are lifted from the fire, using carved wooden tongs and dropped into the wooden bowl filled with water, herbs, and ingredients wrapped in leaves. The stones hiss like startled cats the moment they touch water, sending steam whooshing into the sky. You jump. Everyone else does not. So begins the slow boil show. It's a method developed centuries ago, born of necessity on islands without metal pots. The stone boil method allowed people to prepare soups and stews without needing clay vessels or iron cauldrons. All they needed was a sturdy bowl and enough patience not to scald themselves. Today's menu includes fish marinated in lime and seaweed folded with wild yams and chunks of coconut flesh for sweetness. The mix is wrapped in ti leaves and set to steep in the bubbling water. Additional stones are rotated in and out to maintain a gentle boil. It's like one of those overly complicated coffee brewing stations in hipster cafes, except older, smokier, and with fewer handlebar mustaches. Mainstream history note this technique wasn't limited to Polynesia. Indigenous peoples in North America, such as the Salish and Yurok, used similar methods. But Polynesians were the true masters of the boil, perfecting it into an art form with regional twists. On some islands, heated coral was preferred. Others swore by basalt or even obsidian shards. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some villages, the stones used for boiling were ritually fed with coconut milk before first use. This was believed to awaken their inner fire spirit, ensuring they wouldn't crack mid-meal. Some people even named their stones. You know, like how you name your favorite frying pan Old Reliable, but with more offerings and slightly fewer TikToks. The steam smells incredible, herbaceous, sharp with citrus, and slightly earthy, like the forest floor is trying to cook you a meal. As you help fan the flames and pass the tongs, a boy tells you his grandfather could identify each stone by sound alone. That one hisses angry. This one hisses happy. You nod, not entirely sure how to respond, but you smile anyway. Soon the stew is done. The leaf packets are lifted from the broth and cooled briefly before being opened. Inside, the fish is soft and steaming, the yam nearly melting, and the coconut has taken on an almost meaty richness. You eat it with your hands as tradition demands. One bite and your taste buds throw a parade. The citrus cuts through the creaminess, and the seaweed adds a salty, savory base note. Someone offers you the broth poured into a coconut shell cup. It's like drinking sunlight filtered through moss. You finish it all and sigh. This is the kind of soup that convinces your soul to renew its lease. The debate of the day. Some scholars still argue whether boiling stones were purely culinary or also ceremonial. There are oral traditions suggesting certain dishes, especially those made with root vegetables and coconut, were reserved for rites of passage or mourning ceremonies. Others say, nah, people were just hungry and resourceful. The truth, as usual, probably lies somewhere between the fire and the water. As the last stones are pulled from the water and laid out to cool, the group begins preparing a dessert: mashed bananas mixed with crushed nuts wrapped in leaves and set on still warm stones to gently roast. You steal one early, no regrets. The lagoon glistens nearby, and you dip your fingers in its cool water, watching tiny fish dart through the shallows. A woman beside you hums a tune that seems older than language. She tells you her grandmother believed steam could carry messages to ancestors Rest. You wake from your post-lunch daze just in time to be handed a woven basket light warm and smelling faintly of sweet taro. Inside are palm-sized parcels, their contents still steaming through the banana leaf wrapping. You don't know what they are yet, but you do know you're about to help deliver them. Welcome to the midday sharing ritual. In this part of the island, it's common practice to distribute portions of the midday meal to neighbors, especially elders, new parents, or anyone unable to cook that day. You and a few others move in a quiet procession through the village. No fanfare, just food hands and respect. As you pass one weathered hut, a little boy runs out with a carved gourd and trades it for a bundle from your basket. Inside the gourd, something that looks like dried sea urchin preserved in salt and oil. He grins, possibly knowing you have no idea what to do with it, and disappears back inside. What you're witnessing isn't just neighborly kindness. It's embedded social insurance, an ancient system that ensures no one goes without. Food, especially when cooked communally, becomes a form of currency, status, and affection. There's no written ledger, but people remember. That one time you shared the first breadfruit of the season, that's worth more than 100 IOUs. Mainstream historians generally agree that Polynesian societies were some of the most sophisticated oral economies ever studied. With no coins, no bills, and no spreadsheets, imagine wealth was stored in things like pigs, tapa cloth, and yes, recipes. Being known for your banana pudding was basically like owning a Tesla, except tastier and easier to park. Speaking of pudding, someone hands you another leaf bundle. This one is filled with mashed taro and sweetened coconut, and it jiggles when you shake it gently like a sleepy jellyfish. You take a bite. It's dense, warm, and oddly addictive. A nearby elder pats your shoulder pleased. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. Some Polynesian islands use the exchange of specialty dishes to mark secret social contracts agreements between families' lovers or even rival clans. One 19th century account describes a young couple who passed breadfruit cakes with sesame ash in lieu of engagement rings. Romantic maybe, practical definitely, delicious one would hope. You pause outside a home made of woven pandanus with a roof that curves upward like a boat mid-sail. You're waved in. Inside, a woman is using a shell to grind turmeric into powder on a slab of stone. Her hands are yellow to the wrist. She tells you about her uncle who used to dye his beard with turmeric and pretend to be descended from sun gods. He was not. But she chuckles, and so do you. By now, your basket is lighter. You return to the main clearing and set it down beside a stack of fresh leaves. People are chatting softly, sitting cross-legged under the shade of breadfruit trees. The leaves above rustle like whispered secrets. Scholars still argue whether these midday exchanges should be considered formal trade or informal ritual. Some argue it was purely economic. Others believe the food itself became symbolic, each item carrying layered meanings about seasonal rhythms, ancestral blessings, or even subtle political alliances. Either way, you're part of it now. You've fed and been fed. A group of kids pass by carrying bamboo tubes filled with coconut water poked with straws made of hollow grass stems. One hands you a tube still beaded with condensation. You sip. It tastes faintly like vanilla rain. Nearby, someone is weaving a mat the size of a queen-size bed using hibiscus fiber and patience. You recognize the pattern it mimics fish scales, which symbolize abundance. You ask if it takes long. They shrug. 3 sunsets. You find a spot beneath a large breadfruit tree where the roots make a natural recliner. Above you, the sky wobbles with heat. The leftover steam from the stone boiling has joined the clouds, or at least that's how it feels. Your hands smell faintly of lime and ash. As you lie back, your mind drifts. You think of the people who've shared meals here for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Each bowl past each bite taken a tiny affirmation. You stretch slowly. A few specks of taro cling to your fingers, and your legs feel like they're lined with warm sand. The sun has tilted just a little, and with it the entire island seems to lean into that late afternoon hush. But just when you think it's time for a nap, someone calls your name. Well, not your real name, but the one they gave you earlier, something that translates roughly to steam sniffer or maybe banana face. It's unclear and no one will explain. You're being invited to the beach. The walk down the path is quiet, broken only by distant chickens arguing about absolutely nothing. As you get closer to the sea, the air changes cooler, saltier, buzzing with the kind of humidity that makes your hair invent new shapes. The shoreline here isn't tourist poster white sand. It's volcanic and gritty with jagged stones and long, echoing tide pools. But it's beautiful, honest, and it smells like seaweed and thyme. This is where the evening meal prep begins. And oddly enough, it's also where cooking takes on its most dramatic form, the imu. The imu is the traditional underground oven used throughout Polynesia. It's essentially a slow cooker island style. Someone's already dug the pit wide deep and lined with smooth stones. Firewood is piled high nearby, crackling under the supervision of a barefoot uncle who claims to be part crab. You believe him. Flat stones are arranged at the fire heating until they glow red. Meanwhile, nearby people are wrapping everything in leaves again. Meat, taro, bananas, even a few root vegetables you're 98% sure have eyes. Each bundle is carefully sealed with twine or bark and labeled with a system only grandmothers seem to understand. Here's your job: help gather coconut husk fibers. They'll be used to layer the pit, insulating the food and creating that moist, smoky tenderness everyone craves. As you collect husks, you notice a cluster of kids pretending the burning wood is a dragon. You catch yourself rooting for the dragon. Mainstream historical records confirm that the EMU method was used across hundreds of islands for centuries. Some anthropologists believe it spread with early Lapita migrations, and others argue it developed independently in different island clusters. Either way, it remains one of the most efficient communal cooking tools ever made. Basically, it's the slow cooker your grandma wishes she had. A quirky tidbit for your memory bank: on some islands, families competed for who could stack their emu pit most artistically, layering taro and fish into floral arrangements or symbolic patterns. One legend speaks of a romantic feud resolved through an underground oven duel. The loser had to clean up both pits. Spoiler, they got married anyway. As the coals settle and the rocks radiate heat, the bundles are placed inside like precious relics. There's a reverent silence as people lower them in layer by layer. Then comes the covering: banana leaves, woven mats, palm fronds, earth. Each layer traps the steam, the scent, the story. A mountain of flavor disguised as a mound of dirt. Scholars still debate the original symbolism of the imu. Some believe it mimicked volcanic burial rituals where food was returned to the earth to honor Pele, the goddess of fire. Others suggest it was simply a practical innovation, an accident born of necessity and patience. You lean toward the goddess theory, more dramatic. Once the pit is sealed, there's nothing left to do but wait. And so you sit on a lava rock shaped like a loaf of bread and watch the ocean breathe. It rises, it exhales. A crab sidesteps past your toes with the intensity of a salaryman late for lunch. You nod respectfully. Someone breaks out a nose flute. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. They blow gently and the sound is part dolphin, part lullaby, part what if a kazoo fell in love. It's oddly soothing. A group begins braiding hibiscus cordage preparing for tomorrow's fishing expedition. You join in fumbling at first, but eventually getting into the rhythm. Twist, pull, loop. Again. Your fingers smell like plant sap and roasted coconut. As the sun dips closer to the horizon, the world tilts orange. Shadows stretch across the sand like long memories. You're handed a cup of something possibly fermented, definitely mysterious. It tastes like mango, but with secrets. It's time to check the pit. A few elders begin to uncover the layers, steam hissing like contented spirits. The stars above you blink lazily as if they too have just finished an imu roasted feast and are settling in for a nap. The fire has died down the pit, covered again, not for cooking, but to keep the heat from escaping into the now cool night. You feel it under your feet, the quiet hum of earth still full of stories. You don't stand up right away. No one does. There's a stretch of time after a shared meal where nobody rushes. Time thickens like syrup, and you find yourself staring at the way the moonlight hits a thatched roof, like the roof is glowing softly from within. Someone nearby lets out the kind of sigh that says, "Well, that was enough for today." But the day isn't entirely over. From the far end of the beach, a low drum beat begins steady slow, almost like a heartbeat. This isn't party time. It's something older, quieter, softer. You're being called to the storytelling fire. As you walk toward it, you pass sleeping dogs curled up like furry commas in the sand. The air smells of salt and sandalwood with a hint of smoke still clinging to your shirt. You don't mind. It smells like belonging. The fire circle is small, intimate. No more than a dozen people sit around it. The flames are modest, not built to impress, just enough to light the faces and chase off a few bugs. In the center is an elder, their face carved with time and smile lines. They nod as you take your place. Tonight's story begins not with a shout, but a whisper. The kind of whisper that makes you lean forward instinctively, as if the fire itself has secrets to share. Mainstream historians note that Polynesian oral storytelling wasn't just about entertainment. It was record-keeping, myth-making, law-transmitting, and community-building all in one. With no written language in many regions, the tongue became the scroll and memory the ink. Whole genealogies were recited like epic poems. A birth, a war, a new canoe, they all became songs. The elder speaks of a time when the breadfruit trees walked angry that no one was planting their seeds, of how they marched to the ocean ready to drown until a brave child sang them home. The tale is absurd and moving, and maybe a little real. You glance around. No one is checking their coconut smartwatch. No one is impatient. Even the children are spellbound noses tucked against their knees. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some island communities had story catchers, children trained from a young age to memorize and retell the stories of the old ones like human hard drives. It wasn't enough to remember the words. You had to remember the gestures, the pauses, the tone. One missed breath could change the meaning. Tonight's story weaves through generations like a lay of sound. One tale leads to another, a flying fish that refused to marry a reef eel, a canoe that could only be steered with laughter, a pig that prophesied the tides. You lose track of which parts are myth, which are memory. And honestly, you stop caring. Scholars still argue whether these stories were based on real historical events or allegorical life lessons. Some believe they map out actual migrations or natural disasters encoded in metaphors and sea monsters. Others insist they're moral parables: don't steal, don't lie, don't challenge your grandmother to a dance contest unless you're fully prepared to lose. As the night deepens, the stories slow like a boat drifting toward shore. The fire pops. A spark lifts skyward like a tiny star trying to go home. You're handed a small carved bowl of something warm and cloudy. You sip. It tastes like rain ginger and comfort. You don't ask what it is. You just nod and cradle it like a baby bird. Someone begins to hum a tune so ancient it feels like it grew from the sand. Others join in, their voices layering like waves. You add your own note, tentative at first, then fuller. It's not a song in the way you understand songs. It has no clear. The next morning creeps up on you, not with an alarm, but with the clink of wooden bowls, the crackle of a new fire, and the rhythmic sweep of someone brushing the earth clean with palm fronds. A rooster crows somewhere, off in the trees, probably with a smug look on its beak. The sky is pink and honey-colored, as if someone whispered tropical to a sunrise. You stretch beneath the canopy sand, sticking to one elbow hair, doing its best impersonation of driftwood. No one rushes you. The rhythm of this place says eat when hungry, work when ready, and never hurry past a sunrise like this. As you amble toward the center of the village, a child hands you a small bundle of leaves. Inside is your breakfast, steamed bananas mashed with coconut and wrapped in Thai leaves. It's warm and sticky and smells like sugar. Had a conversation with the forest. You eat it sitting cross-legged next to a tree that might be older than most of recorded history. After breakfast, it's time to contribute. No one calls it work in the way you're used to. There's no board meeting, no Excel sheets, just shared effort. You're pointed toward the garden terraces where rows of breadfruit trees sway like old men, nodding at jokes they've heard before. Tending to a Polynesian garden is less about controlling nature and more about cooperating with it. You don't till aggressively, you coax. The soil isn't just dirt, it's living, breathing, storied. You press your fingers into it, and it presses back gently, reminding you that you're late to the conversation. Mainstream historians recognize that many Polynesian societies practiced a form of agroforestry, combining trees, shrubs, and crops in multi-layered systems that mirrored natural ecosystems. In some places, breadfruit trees were planted alongside taro in elevated mounds that helped prevent erosion and catch rainwater. It was science before science got self-important. As you work, someone beside you hums a melody that sticks like molasses. It's part lullaby, part reminder to not yank the sapling too hard. You find yourself humming too. There's something soothing about digging in the dirt with a tune in your throat. At some point, someone mentions lunch, and you look up surprised that time has passed. The sun is high, the shadows short. You're a little sunburnt, slightly sweaty, and weirdly content. You've done very little by modern standards, just moved a few stones, pulled a few weeds, whispered to a few roots, but somehow you feel useful. Lunch is served under a canopy of pandanus leaves. It's fish again grilled this time with a side of mashed taro that tastes like the love child of a potato and a marshmallow. You eat slowly, savoring each bite because in this place, fast food isn't a compliment. After the meal, there's a quiet period. Not a nap exactly, but a communal stillness. People lie on mats fanning themselves with woven paddles or just stare at the horizon like it's an old friend they haven't visited in a while. You lie down too, using your rolled up woven bag as a pillow. It's in this lull that someone begins to talk about the old days, not in the fireside storytelling way, but casually like remembering a favorite aunt. They speak of a time when cooking wasn't just survival but ceremony, when the opening of a new oven pit was treated like a holiday, complete with songs, dances, and sometimes elaborate pranks involving slippery coconut oil and unsuspecting guests. One of the elders leans in eyes twinkling and shares a tale about a mischievous cook who once swapped out the sacred sea salt with finely ground coral dust. The meal turned out beautifully, but the crunch nearly caused a diplomatic incident between two islands. Historians still argue, the elder chuckles, whether it was sabotage or just poor labeling. You're not sure if any of these tales are true, but does it matter? They're embroidered with love, seasoned with laughter, and served up with impeccable timing. Like all good stories, they're meant to stick not just in your head, but in your belly. As the day lengthens, you're invited to join in another round of cooking. This time it's a boiling stone method. You help gather stones from a pile that's been drying in the sun all day. Each one is chosen carefully, not too small, not too cracked, and definitely not one that looks like it'll explode when heated. A lesson learned the hard way is evidenced by the scar on a nearby log. A wide wooden bowl is prepared lined with fresh leaves and filled with water. Once the stones are glowing hot in the fire, they're plucked out with tongs made of split bamboo and carefully dropped into the water. The result, a hiss of steam, a little sizzle, and slowly boiling water ready to cook fish, taro, or leafy greens. It's basically a stovetop if your stove was made of volcanic. You wake again the next day not to the sound of alarms or buzzing notifications, but to the soft hush of palm leaves brushing together and the distant lilt of a conch shell blowing across the lagoon. It's not exactly a rooster this time, more like nature collectively agreeing that it's a reasonable hour to be conscious. You blink up at a sky that is once again offensively beautiful. Too blue. Too perfect. It's rude, honestly. Today you're told is a special cooking day, which sounds suspiciously like every other day you've had here, except people are smiling more than usual, and there's a certain bounce in their step that suggests something's going to get roasted, steamed, or accidentally dropped into a pit and served with great ceremony anyway. Your job this morning is stone flipper, which, despite sounding like an ancient insult or a niche CrossFit title, is actually quite literal. The community is preparing for a full-scale umu, the Polynesian earth oven feast. So naturally, there are hot stones to be flipped, leaves to be soaked, and food to be bundled like delicious origami. The process begins with digging a pit bigger than yesterday's. This one could easily fit a family-sized SUV, but instead it will hold bundles of meat, breadfruit taro, and bananas layered in flavor like a tropical lasagna. Hot stones heated over hours are lowered in first. Then come the soaked banana leaves to line and insulate the pit, and finally the food parcels wrapped in ti leaves or bark cloth tied with strips of coconut fiber like little edible gifts. Historians still argue whether the umu originated as a purely culinary innovation or if it emerged more from religious ceremony. Some believe that feasting was inseparable from honoring the gods, that every meal of this scale was an offering, and every flavor carried a prayer. Which makes sense when you see how reverently the process unfolds. You don't just toss in a steak and hope for the best. As a flipper of stones, you quickly learn the importance of the right tools. Split bamboo tongs, woven mitts made from hibiscus bark, and a distinct absence of OSHA-approved footwear. One misstep, and you'll be hopping like the island frogs who, let's be honest, probably enjoy this spectacle far too much. Between tasks, you learn another odd tidbit. Certain communities used to sing to the food during preparation. Not to spice it with intention, though that's poetic, but to keep rhythm and make sure everyone worked in harmony. Imagine Gordon Ramsay yelling in verse, less rage, more melody. There's something oddly satisfying about working in synchrony with others. You pass bundles, cover them in ferns, lay more stones, and top it all off with mats woven from pandanus. Then dirt is shoveled over the whole thing, sealing it like a secret. Now the waiting begins. You're ushered back toward the beach where the shade of the palm trees has been turned into an impromptu spa. Apparently you've earned some downtime, which here translates into coconut oil foot rubs, shell jewelry crafting, or if you're feeling brave, competitive canoe sanding. The rules are unclear, but the stakes are high. Someone wins a garland of flowers. Someone else ends up accidentally exfoliated. As you watch an elder string seashells onto a cord made from tree bark, they start telling a story about the first breadfruit tree. In some versions, it grows from a man's heart, in others, from a fallen chief who sacrificed himself to feed his people. Either way, the tree becomes sacred, not just for food, but for memory. A tree you don't cut down lightly and certainly never argue with. Mainstream archaeology confirms that the cultivation of breadfruit was central to food security in many Polynesian islands. The trees could live decades, even centuries, and provided a starchy staple that required little maintenance. But what scholars still debate is how Polynesian voyagers managed to carry seedlings or root cuttings across vast stretches of ocean without GPS, without plastic coolers, and certainly without airline peanuts. After a while, the scent of roasting food begins to sneak out from the buried oven pit, winding its way through the palms and into your unsuspecting nostrils. It's slow, smoky, and intoxicating, a blend of earth steam and faintly caramelized banana. You swear you could smell it back on the boat 2 days ago? Everyone begins drifting back toward the pit. Children giggle and dance in circles. Someone brings a drum. Someone else begins singing a song that sounds older than the trees. This is more than just dinner. This is ritual. The unearthing begins slowly, carefully. The mats are peeled away, the ferns steamed and wilted lifted gently aside. The stones are moved now dark and exhausted from their labor. Then come the bundles, steaming and fragrant. You feel like an archaeologist uncovering delicious ruins. When the food is finally served, there are no place cards. You sleep well that night. How could you not? The air is perfumed with burnt breadfruit and coconut ash. Your belly is an agreeable weight, and the stars above are clear enough to make you feel like you've wandered into the background of a nature documentary narrated by a very relaxed dolphin. No stress, no traffic, no emails. Just the occasional snore from a nearby uncle and the crickets working overtime. Come morning, you're invited to help with something different. No ovens today, no stone flipping or bundle tossing. Instead, you're going to ferment something. This sounds suspicious at first. Fermentation in most people's minds is somewhere between advanced chemistry and accidental Tupperware mold. But here fermentation is a careful sacred art. Today's ingredient of choice, taro. Yes, the humble taro root which has appeared in your meals all week like a shy but dependable supporting actor. It turns out taro can also be fermented into something called poi. Think of it as a kind of pudding that's part staple food, part cultural glue, and depending on the age of the batch, part microbial adventure. First, the taro must be cooked, usually steamed or baked in the earth oven the day before. Once it's soft enough to mash with a stick or a clean, enthusiastic fist, it's mixed with a bit of water until it reaches a smooth, sticky consistency that's, well, let's call it textured. Then it's left to ferment in a covered bowl for a few days. That's it. No fridges, no timers. Just patience and the confident belief that time, warmth, and ambient island magic will do the rest. Historians still argue whether POI was originally created for preservation or for digestion. It keeps longer than raw taro. Yes, but it's also easier on the stomach, especially after it's been fermenting for a while. Some say it was for the elderly or children. Others insist it was for warriors needing quick, starchy fuel before a long canoe voyage. Either way, you're about to try it. Your host gives you a bowl and a carved wooden spoon that looks like it belongs in a museum. You scoop, you sniff, you taste. It's tangy, sour sweet, like yogurt made from clouds and questionable intent. You try not to make a face, but someone nearby laughs kindly. They've seen this expression before. Give it a day, they say, tapping their bowl. The second time tastes better. You believe them. And you do in fact try it again later after a walk through the breadfruit groves, a quick splash in a freshwater spring, and a spontaneous game of something involving coconuts and extremely loose rules. By that point, the poi doesn't taste strange anymore. It tastes familiar, comforting, like chewing on memory. Here's a quirky tidbit in some island traditions. The consistency of poi is used as a metric for family closeness. Thick poi means a tight-knit family, people who spend time together, eat together, and don't dilute their roots. Thin poi. That's a sign of distance, either emotional or literal. It's food as metaphor, which honestly feels like something your therapist should hear. As the day stretches on, you're invited to help prepare popoi, a fermented mixture of breadfruit and banana, sometimes mixed with coconut and left to sour in a pit. Yes, it sounds intense. Yes, it smells like something you'd use to chase away spirits. But yes, it's also deeply loved and often reserved for special occasions. Preparing po' poi is another hands-on experience. You mash the breadfruit with a smooth stone mix and mashed bananas and press everything into a shallow hole lined with leaves. Then it's covered and weighted down with even more stones. Nature does the rest. In a few days, it'll emerge as a tangy, sticky, starchy concoction that tastes better than it has any right to. This too is part of the island rhythm. Cook some, bury some, ferment the rest. No waste, no excess. Everything has its time. Everything waits. You begin to understand that Polynesian cooking is less about recipes and more about seasons, smells, sounds, gut feelings. You can't learn it from a book, you learn it from doing, from watching, from quietly handing the right leaf to the right person at the right moment. Later that afternoon, you visit a canoe house, a long shelter near the beach where tools are stored, nets are repaired, and fish are gutted with an ease that would make most cooking show contestants weep. Someone is grilling octopus over hot coals. The smell is rich, briny, and surprisingly floral. You take a bite, careful not to look too surprised when it melts in your mouth like sea butter. As you eat, a young girl tells you about the stone whisperers, elders who could tap on a cooking stone and tell whether it was ready by the sound it made, not too dry, not too damp. Like tuning a piano, but tastier. Historians aren't sure whether this was real skill or just flair for the dramatic. Either way, you kind of want to believe it. The sun leans west, the shadows lengthen, the coals cool, and the morning air is crisp, not cold, but awake. You feel it in your shoulders before you feel it in your brain, the kind of breeze that whispers, hey, let's do something mildly difficult today. And so with that gentle nudge from nature, you're handed a woven basket, a machete that's definitely sharper than your cooking skills, and a coconut shell full of water. It's time to harvest. Not taro, not bananas, not even the noble breadfruit. Today you're going fishing but without a boat, or a rod, or a single ounce of chill. This is reef gathering day and it begins at low tide. You squish across the exposed coral flats, hopping from stone to stone, avoiding tiny crabs who seem personally offended by your presence. Your guide and uncle, with a smile as wide as the horizon, points to a smooth-looking rock and says something you don't quite catch. Then he flips the rock, and out from underneath it squirms a small octopus, slippery and startled. He grabs it before it knows what's happening, murmuring thanks in the local tongue. You watch half in awe, half in mild fear of what other creatures might be lurking under other rocks. The reef, it turns out, is not a quiet place. It's a full pantry, and every tide it sets its table. You learn how to look for signs, small holes in the sand that mean clams, ripples in a tide pool that hint at trapped fish, dark splotches that suggest sea cucumbers, which are either a delicacy or a slimy dare, depending on whom you ask. Historians still argue whether sea cucumber was originally prized for its nutritional value or its impressive shelf life. Either way, the taste is, let's call it, an acquired experience like pickled jelly beans or interpretive dance performed entirely in mime. After an hour of squatting, flipping, pointing, and the occasional yelp of, whoa, what is that? You return with your basket-filled mollusks, seaweed, a crab who refuses to accept his fate, and yes, a fish that somehow landed itself in a shallow pocket and didn't notice the trap until you were practically waving hello. You help prepare a reef feast. Seaweed is rinsed and tossed with coconut cream. Clams are steamed over hot rocks. The octopus is tenderized, gently pounded, then rubbed with salt and grilled until its edges curl like a lazy comma. You help with all of it, even the part where you have to gut something with more bones than sense. There's laughter. Not at you, okay, maybe a little at you, but around you. The kind of joy that comes from routine turned ritual, from a task done not just well, but together. And that's the thing. So much of Polynesian cooking isn't about the food, it's about the hands. The passing of bowls leaves fire and time. You start to notice the rhythm of it, how no one ever stands still for long, how there's always a song being hummed, a joke being tossed, a child being hoisted onto someone's shoulders, like they're the prize in a raffle you didn't know you entered. Midday, you sit beneath a palm frond, lean to licking sea salt off your fingers. Someone hands you a chunk of baked breadfruit drizzled with fermented coconut sap. And if that sounds fancy, you should know it also tastes like burnt marshmallows met maple syrup in a beachside love affair. You eat slowly. Everything here invites slowness. The ocean doesn't rush, the sun doesn't hurry, and the meals, especially those from reef days, come with long pauses between bites, half from appreciation, half from chewing textures your mouth is still learning. Did you know some families used to measure a cook's skill not by taste but by sound? True story. Quieter eating meant softer octopus. Fewer jaw clicks meant the crab meat was just right. It's the only cooking show where silence is the applause. Later that afternoon, you're shown how to preserve your catch. There's salt drying, of course. Fish split open, spread wide, and left to sunbathe on clean woven mats. There's also pit smoking, burying the cleaned seafood in a shallow hole, with hot coals covering it with leaves and letting it slow cook for hours until it practically whispers, "Eat me," from below the earth. You help prepare the pit. Someone teaches you the specific leaf fold that keeps the steam in without turning the fish to mush. Another shows you how to test the heat with the back of your hand. If you flinch, it's wrong. If you sigh, it's right. Historians still argue whether this preservation method originated in times of war or famine, or simply as a way to bring grandma's favorite snack to the next island over without needing a cooler. What we do know is it works. Some smoked fish stays good for weeks, even months. The sun is just a glow behind the palms when you're woken by the sound of someone sharpening a knife, not in a threatening way, more like a breakfast is coming kind of way. You roll over on your woven mat, stretch your limbs, and remind yourself today is Boiling Stones Day. You try not to let the name intimidate you. The stone boiling method, also called imu in some Polynesian region or umu elsewhere, is essentially an outdoor oven. If your oven were a shallow pit lined with hot rocks, packed with leaves stuffed with root vegetables and fish, and sealed shut for half a day while everyone sits around pretending not to be hungry. You shuffle over to the cooking area where a ring of volcanic stones is already glowing with that reddish-black heat that seems to hum if you get close enough. Your guide today is a woman who looks like she could build a canoe and recite a 1,000-year genealogy without breaking eye contact. She hands you a long stick and nods toward the stones. You're stirring, carefully. One false move and breakfast becomes a toe injury. As you work, she tells you about the stones, how not just any will do. They need to be dense, non-porous, and preferably from a stream bed. The wrong ones will explode, as in actual tiny rock grenades, which, let's face it, would really ruin the vibe. Historians still argue whether stone selection was based on trial and error or passed down from some ancient volcanic whisperer. Some suggest there were spiritual dimensions to the stone choices. Others think people just learned the hard way not to put crumbly rocks near open fire. Once the stones are hot enough to make you sweat just by looking at them, the layering begins. First, banana leaves. Broad green and surprisingly fire-resistant. They form a bed, a kind of crinkly, welcome mat for the food to come. Next, taro. Great chunks of it peeled and damp. Then sweet potatoes, purple on the inside, and sugary enough to taste like dessert before dessert. Then fish wrapped in more leaves, sometimes smeared with a paste made from fermented nuts or coconut milk or just salt and thyme. And then comes the meat. Maybe it's pork, maybe it's chicken, maybe it's a fish so big it makes eye contact with you from the other side of the pit. Whatever it is, it's lowered gently, reverently, as though the pit were an altar and lunch a sacred offering. The hot stones go on top, then more leaves. Then this is the wild part, wet cloth, sometimes woven mats, sometimes even dirt or sand to seal in the heat. What you've built essentially is a pressure cooker powered by lava stones and patience. You're told to wait for hours. So you do. You wait by weaving mats, by shelling coconuts, by humming along to old songs with no translation but plenty of emotion. You wait while kids run around with bare feet and sticky fingers, and elders sit cross-legged in the shade, gossiping like time hasn't moved in decades. Someone hands you a cup of warm kava root tea. It tastes like earthy toothpaste and makes your tongue go slightly numb. You're told this is normal. You believe them. You drink more. Eventually, after you've forgotten what hunger even is, the earth oven is opened. Steam billows out like a genie finally released. The scent, earthy, meaty, herbal, smoky, wraps itself around your brain like a lullaby. You help lift the top layers, careful not to burn your fingers, though honestly at this point, you'd grab a coal bare-handed just to get a bite. The food is unwrapped like gifts. The meat falls apart with a sigh. The taro has absorbed so much flavor it's basically pudding with a tan. The sweet potatoes are golden and sticky. The fish flakes like it's been relaxing in a hot tub all morning. You're handed a leaf folded into a plate, and without ceremony, the feast begins. You eat slowly, reverently, and with full-body satisfaction. You learn to mix a bite of smoky pork with a lump of starchy taro. You learn that coconut cream poured over hot vegetables is not optional. You learn that stone-cooked meals, for all their prehistoric charm, hit every modern craving like a gourmet buffet disguised as a dirt pile. There's laughter again. There's humming. There's a moment where someone stands and tells a story from 5 generations ago, and though you don't catch every word, you catch the rhythm, and that's enough. Did you know some of the oldest myths in Polynesian culture involve food stolen from the gods' fire, brought by birds' bananas, gifted by spirits, a fish hook pulled from the sky? Historians still argue whether these tales, morning in the islands doesn't sneak up, it sings itself awake. You rise to a breeze that smells like warm pandan leaves and hear the soft thwap-thwap of feet on damp earth. Today isn't about fire or feasting. Today is about climbing trees, specifically coconut trees. And if that doesn't sound historical, well, just wait. You walk barefoot with a local elder who could outclimb you with one arm tied behind his back and probably has just for fun. He hands you a rope, a loop of fiber twisted from hibiscus bark. You're going to shimmy up a palm with this, he says. You nod politely and try not to cry. Turns out ancient Polynesian cooking isn't all boiling stones and banana paste. It's also about tree-sourced ingredients that require athleticism timing and a total disregard for gravity. Coconut, of course, is king, but there's also sugarcane pandanus and even breadfruit that prefers to ripen high up out of reach and good sense. You wrap the rope around your feet and the trunk dig in your toes and hug the palm like a nervous koala. The bark is rough but forgiving. The height is dizzying but oddly serene. About halfway up, your legs begin to tremble, and you remember that you're here to talk about food, not fall out of a tree. Your guide encourages you with a gesture that may or may not translate to "don't die." Historians still argue whether this tree-climbing technique, where climbers shimmy with feet strapped together and palms against the trunk, originated independently across the islands, or was carried from a single cultural hearth across Micronesia and beyond. Some archaeologists suggest it's one of the oldest food-related skills in Oceania. What's clear is that the people who developed it did so with purpose. High up in the canopy, coconuts weren't just snacks. They were water jugs, oil reserves, milk sources, fermentable flesh for vinegars and sauces. The husks made bowls. The shells made cups, instruments, and occasionally awkward makeshift helmets for clumsy first-time climbers like you. You eventually make it to the top, or close enough. With a practiced jerk, your guide twists a few ripe coconuts free. They thud to the ground, bouncing but not breaking. You slide back down the trunk in less than elegant fashion and sit down on the sand, trying not to notice the bark burn on your calves. A younger child shows you how to crack open the coconut with a rock and pry out the white flesh. It's soft, almost custardy, sweet, slightly tangy. The liquid inside clear, nutty, and more hydrating than any store-bought sports drink. You drink it straight from the husk, wipe your mouth with your wrist, and look up at the tree like it just handed you a diploma. Later, back at the cook site, the coconut flesh gets scraped into long white curls with a tool that looks like a cross between a cheese grater and a medieval trap. These shavings will go into everything: sauces, stews, desserts. Someone sets aside a few to dry for storage. Others are toasted gently over coals to serve as garnish or snacks. You learn that in some island traditions, the very first coconut is offered to ancestors or gods before anyone takes a bite. It's not superstition, it's community ritual respect. A reminder that food is not just sustenance, but memory. You also hear of coconut oil's many lives, used in hairskin cooking and even lighting small lamps. There's even a tale about a priest who once used coconut oil to waterproof his fishing nets during a storm and caught more fish than the entire village had seen in months. Historians still debate whether this is metaphor or early marine science. And then there's the coconut crab. You're not prepared. It looks like a coconut on legs, hence the name. It climbs trees. It steals shiny things. It cracks open coconuts with pincers that could probably crush a skateboard. It is part myth, part dinner. No one makes you eat it today, but someone does joke that it once stole a chief's ring and wore it for a week before it was caught. The crab, not the chief. The day slows again. You chew on a strip of dried banana and watch a group of children rehearse a dance that tells a story about a jealous wind god and a very stubborn yam. You've stopped questioning the narratives by now. Dinner is light rice if there's some left fish grilled on hot stones, and you awaken to the faint sound of waves brushing against coral lazy foamy, almost shy. The scent of damp leaves and warm stones still lingers in the air. Your body aches in that oddly satisfying way that only follows a day spent clambering trees chewing roasted tubers and failing to gracefully avoid coconut crabs. But today your culinary education takes a slightly quieter turn fermentation. No fire, no smoke, no thunderous pounding, just time, patience, and a great deal of intentional rot. Polynesians mastered fermentation in ways that would impress even the most hipster of modern foodies. From sour starches to effervescent palm sap brews, they turned perishables into preserved treasures, coaxing complex flavors from tropical ingredients without refrigerators, timers, or even words like probiotic. You wander toward a shaded grove where someone is already digging up a pit from days ago, maybe weeks. The scent that rises from the hole is sharp earthy and a bit like sweaty pineapple. This is massy fermented breadfruit and it's an acquired taste. Like blue cheese if blue cheese was humid, sticky, and the color of taupe regret. But still it has its loyal fans. And you're about to become one maybe. The paste is mixed with coconut cream and sometimes banana. It's served in a leaf bowl handed to you with a nod and eaten with fingers. It tastes complex, tangy, smoky, rich in that way that says your gut microbiome is in for a party. You learn that fermentation wasn't just a flavor thing, it was survival. On long voyages across the Pacific, stored fermented foods could mean the difference between resilience and starvation. Historians still argue whether fermentation methods spread from one central origin or sprang up independently across the vast oceanic network of islands. What's clear is that it made culinary endurance an art. And it wasn't just food drinks got the treatment too. Palm wine, for example, created by tapping sap and letting it bubble naturally over hours or days. Not enough alcohol to topple anyone, but enough to soften edges and coax song out of silence. It's shared in cups carved from coconut shell, passed hand to hand, the rim wiped with a thumb between sips. There's no pressure to drink, just presence. The rhythm of the day slows even further. You help stir a vat of mashed taro carefully folded into woven leaf baskets for steaming tomorrow. You watch as someone mashes bananas with roasted nut paste into a creamy dessert that smells like sun-warmed sugar. And somewhere in the background, a child is laughing at a chicken who clearly disapproves of being left out of dinner. You hear stories, one about an island where a sacred yeast was guarded by a single family for generations, only passed on through song and whispered technique. Another about a sour root mash so strong it supposedly once convinced an invading war chief to stay for dinner and not burn down the village. Diplomacy by fermentation. And then there's the boiling stones. A large bowl is filled with cold water, sliced tubers, coconut milk, and leaves for flavor. Into this, someone drops a red-hot rock from a fire. It hisses and dances underwater like it's throwing a tantrum. Another joins, then another. The bowl bubbles not because it's on heat, but because heat is inside it. You help with the rock rotation, pulling the cooled ones out with wooden tongs and replacing them with new ones from the fire. It's strangely meditative. You feel connected to the act in a way no microwave could ever replicate. There's a final dish. It's just called Fruit Thing by your host, and it's everything ripe in a carved wooden bowl. Papaya, star fruit, banana, mango. You eat it with your fingers while the stars begin to draw polka dots across the sky. And then comes silence. Not the total kind waves still tumble, fire still pops. Someone's breath catches softly in a half snore nearby, but that kind of hush that wraps around you. Warm, safe, full. You think back to the very first bite, the mashed breadfruit, the banana cooked in an earth oven, the fish roasted on coals, the climbing for coconuts, the fermentation rituals. None of it was flashy. None of it demanded your attention with spice or fire. But all of it lingers like a song stuck in your teeth. Polynesian food, you realize, isn't about boldness. It's about balance. Between sea and land. Between heat and time. Between nourishment and memory. And you've eaten your way through more than just calories. You've digested centuries of knowledge passed hand to hand, from fire pit to forehead, from one generation's quiet whisper to the next hungry mouth. Your eyes begin to close. The fire burns low, throwing sleepy shadows against the woven matting of your shelter. You curl up with a full belly and an even fuller heart. The scent of smoked banana leaves and earth clings to your skin. Somewhere in the distance, a ukulele murmurs the start of another lullaby. The waves roll in,